Hello there, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to today's telecoms.com intelligence webinar brought to you in association with CentralNic. My name is Tim Skinner and I am the Head of Intelligence here at telecoms.com, and today's presentation will be looking at how to open up new revenue streams using DNS infrastructure or domain name system infrastructure. So joining us today we have three speakers from CentralNic. We have Ben Crawford, who is the CEO, Rishi Mordhub, who is the Head of Enterprise Consultancy Services, and Sven-Holger Wabnitz, who's a Senior Advisor, and they are going to be going through all of the opportunities and challenges that exist today in terms of opening up new opportunities for monetization. At the end of today's session, we'll be running a live Q&A element with featuring audio conversations with each of the speakers. So should you have any questions that come in during the presentation, please use the dialog box that you can see on the left-hand side of this page. Your questions will come through to us and we will answer as many as we can in the time allowed. But for now, it's over to the guys from CentralNic.
Thanks, Tim. Hello, everyone, and thanks again for joining us for today's webinar. I'm Ben Crawford, and I'm joined by my colleagues Rishi Mordhub and Sven-Holger Wabnitz to present to you some examples of how telcos are using new technologies to earn additional revenues from their existing customer bases and IT infrastructures. Before we go any further, there are a few points we need to make clear, and this will help to set the scene for our discussion today. Firstly, the revenue and profit boosters that we're talking about are available to telcos whether you're in a mature market like the US or Western Europe or a developing market, and whether your key business is mobile or fixed line. Secondly, telcos around the world are already achieving massive market share and attractive profits using these technologies. And thirdly, even if your telco is already engaged in some of the activities we discussed today, we found that the latest technologies can significantly improve margins with very minimal outlay. So these revenue boosters are domain names and add-on services like web hosting, website builders, SSL certificates, email, e-commerce software, and online security and protection. The strength of these domain names and add-on services is that many of your customers, whether SMBs or enterprise customers, are already familiar with them. They're the tools they need to get online and acquire customers online. So, for a telco to offer them or bundle them and sell them to your existing client base taps into an existing demand while offering the convenience of a one-stop shop. We've got three great case studies to talk through today of telcos showing the very real benefits that they've achieved. Telco companies across the world are already monetizing their customer database with domain services. And again, these opportunities are being exploited by operators in both mature and developing markets. If your telco is not currently in the domain services business, it represents a lucrative new revenue stream which is proven to fit in with other major business lines for telcos. And if you already are in this business, new automated tools can vastly improve efficiency and security while eliminating costs. Customers will spend varying amounts up to thousands of dollars a year on these services, and they all share the same advantages. Firstly, modern sales solutions for selling domain-related services are either fully automated software solutions or fully outsourced managed services. Either way, they require minimal resources to run, with the software systems and outsourced providers performing the majority of the work for you. Secondly, you, the telco, take a share in the revenues, though you have virtually no operating costs. And lastly, all these services are sold on a subscription model, so the revenues are recurring and they scale and build with every new customer who comes on board. So, from a helicopter perspective, you have the opportunity to provide some great value-added services to your customers, saving them from having to set up accounts with other vendors, again with minimal operating costs and an increasing yearly recurring revenue stream that make this a very attractive opportunity. Before we look at the first case study, we should briefly explain our credentials to discuss these services. I'm the CEO of CentralNic PLC. We're a 20-year-old specialist in the domain name and affiliated services space listed on the London Stock Exchange. Rishi is our head of enterprise consulting, and Sven Holger is our telco product specialist, and together they're responsible for our global engagement with telco clients. Our work with telcos is currently concentrated in Western Europe, the Middle East and Asia, but our solutions and managed services are global in scope. We work in partnership with some of the world's largest solutions providers already serving the market and have experience with many systems integrators. Here we have an illustration of the revenues that can be, and indeed have been, achieved by telcos entering the domain market. One client, a telco, has built up sales of 500,000 domains at an average price of roughly $10 per year, achieving $5 million in revenues. We know that typically 1 in 10 sales results in the sale of a hosting package, normally priced at around $9 per month for a small business. This adds another $5.5 million in revenues. We also know that roughly 1 in every 100 domain sales also results in the purchase of a website builder, adding a further $500,000. So that's a total of $11 million in revenues, and these are not one-off sales, but annually recurring revenues that grow as more domains are sold over the years. To give you an idea now of the customer experience and to demonstrate how quickly revenues can build, Rishi will now take you through the purchase flow of CentralNic's platform. Rishi?
Ben. So let's take a look at our first case study. We're going to quickly show you what the user experience is using a store we have built for a non-telco brand called Only Domains. It's a white label service. So where you can see Only Domains on your screen, that would be your telco brand, and the whole site would be configured to blend seamlessly with your other sites, including your billing systems. So the customer comes to a page that looks like this, dominated by a center screen, left to right search box. The first thing our customer wants to do is see if they can get the domain name they want to support their growing business. For a US or global business, they will want the .com domain, or one of the new generic endings like .xyz, .online, or .site. If our customer is outside the US, they will typically want their local country code to ensure their website comes up in local search results and to let customers know they are a local business. So the customer enters their business name and hits the search button. They are then presented with a range of different endings to choose from. Because the business is in the UK, they choose the .co.uk domain. Now a .co.uk domain name only costs a few dollars a year. So in itself, it's not a meaningful revenue earner for the vendor, but as we shall see, the .co.uk domain acts as a gateway to other services made available to the customer during this shopping cart order process. Next in our example, our customer chooses to register the .com domain name. Not because they want to use it today, but in case one day they do go global, but most importantly, as a defensive registration to prevent anyone else getting that domain name. It's now the norm for even small businesses to buy more than one domain name, either for future plans or defensively. Large companies have portfolios of defensive registrations, numbering into the tens of thousands. Our customer continues down the purchase path, and note that the site already knows that I'm logged in the top right hand corner of the screen. In the case of a telco customer, this would be the customer's phone account, as this site will be integrated with the telco's CRM system. As you will see from this short summary of domain registrations, the .co.uk and .com domains are being registered for a 2-year term. We're going to turn privacy on and also the auto-renew feature, Privacy ensures that the customer's personal details are masked from public record, and auto-renew takes care of that recurring revenue by ensuring that every 2 years, when the term expires, the domain automatically renews. Now, as you'll remember, we said that the domain name acts as a gateway to other services. So as you'll see from the summary screen, the customer, having been offered website and email hosting, which are very popular add-ons, these have been added to the purchase flow also. These can be presented in a variety of manners, and with regard to hosting, we've gone for an economy package for a 2-year term complementing the registration period, and we've added those to the shopping cart. It's important to remember that every add-on creates a revenue stream for the vendor, and that's you, the telco, and this helps bump up the price of the initial lower revenue point of the domain name. Now, just a note that as this case study is based on an existing customer, your site can be configured to include a range of other add-ons, such as website builders, another very popular add-on, SSL certificates, which is a security feature to protect websites, and webmail. And remember, email is still the most popular application on the internet, and it's crucial for business communication, such as sending purchase orders and invoices. So look at where our customer is now. They have a couple of domain names and an economy level hosting package. And this initial domain purchase of .co.uk and .com domain names has turned into a grand total value of $263 during less than a 3-minute online purchase process. Now, remember, as the billing would be integrated into your telco system, the charges could be added to your customer's monthly telephone bill, making it a truly digital experience.
One objection we often hear from telcos is that they doubt that customers will buy domain name services from them when there are specialist vendors in their market. But there's no grounds to this objection. In fact, let's take a look at another case study to get a sense of the potential market share telcos can achieve. These numbers are public information, so we're not betraying any confidences here. The telco in question is Etisalat, a great success with a footprint spreading over 18 countries and growing. Focusing on the domestic market, the UAE, you can see Etisalat is the front runner in .ae domain names. They have a market share of 71.5%, miles ahead of their nearest competitor, and in fact miles ahead of what specialist domain retailers do in most countries. And remember, this is just for the .ae domain names. It doesn't count the .coms and the other domain names that they also sell to their customers. In fact, telcos have some key natural advantages to achieve market share in the domain services business. Firstly, you've already got the customers with accounts set up and billing relationships in place. The economics of domain services are totally different for telcos, as you can farm your existing customer base, turning profits immediately, whereas pure play vendors of domain name services have to spend up to $100 per customer just to acquire them. Secondly, you're already the trusted brand that's bringing the internet to your customers through connectivity, devices, broadband in their homes, and so on. You're the go-to supplier for all things internet, so domain names and related services is simply a natural extension of the services that you already offer your customers. Let's turn now to what's driving the growth of domain names. The main driver is actually the growth of the internet itself. There are 3 billion internet users currently and around 326 million domain names registered. So the ratio is roughly 1 domain per 10 users. There's a massive push driven largely by telcos but also government policy, handset manufacturers to get the next 3 billion people online by 2022. In fact, the United Nations recently declared internet access to be a human right, so we can expect another 300 million domain names in the next 6 years. New domain endings like .xyz, .online and .site are making attractive domains available to startups and small businesses globally at more affordable prices than ever before. In the last 6 months alone, our company CentralNic has sold an average of 1 million domains per month with these endings. Meanwhile, governments in developing countries around the world are moving from inefficient manual processing of domain registration for their country code domains to systems that are fully automated, enabling the fully automated selling of domain names right through the distribution channel. The other reason telcos should act now on domain services is that there are now turnkey technical solutions available that were just not there a few years ago. These solutions allow for rapid deployment, elimination of manual processes, in fact, of almost any resources on the telco side to run them, elevated levels of security and resiliency, revenue sharing, and full integration with your internal systems. In fact, for telcos already in the domain business, it's timely to take another look at your systems and consider some of the new automation and managed services models, as many legacy systems suffer from drawbacks like manual processing, labor-intensive operations, inability to scale, and so on. As the number of internet users grows, so will the number of transactions for domain names and add-on services. New automation and managed services future-proof existing systems, ensuring that your telco is geared for growth in this rapidly growing sector. Our third case study for the telco industry involves a company which developed an in-house system for managing domain names. What this telco found was that, as scale increased, not only were their costs mounting, but so were faults and errors, and they had sole liability for those errors. What they identified was needed was a shift to a software system that was fully configured and supported and able to handle the volume with the functionality already baked in to offset human input errors. A software solution that also had the capability to sell add-on products and services as these were introduced. So they switched to a CentralNic solution named Dominic, and the results were as follows. You can see the numbers on the slide, but in summary, there were total seamless integration with the telco's existing CRM and billing systems, as well as the technical system for DNS in hosting, which resulted in a leaner process and resulted in cost savings, as well as a higher quality of service and less faults and errors. Secondly, a self-service customer portal enabled both residential and business customers to self-manage their domain portfolios as well as their DNS entries. The result, higher revenues and lower fulfillment costs. And finally, leveraging the 20 years of experience sitting behind this software solution, where the telco had previously relied on many manual and labor-intensive processes, they could now eliminate manual handling altogether and offer domain and DNS services in an automated and far more cost-effective structure, driving up their margins. So now we've explored the SMB market opportunity, let's switch for a moment to talk about how you can better support and service your enterprise customers when it comes to their needs around domain names and DNS. There are two other potential sources of added revenues for telcos. Second is DNS Services, which we'll address in a minute. The first one is a bundle of key services, including domain portfolio management, acquisition of already registered domain names, monitoring of the internet for illicit registrations of domain names, legal steps to recover illicitly registered domain names, and so on. All of these may be offered by telcos and then fully outsourced at a profit. These services are already familiar to your enterprise customers. They probably buy them from standalone providers. By creating a one-stop shop, combining these services with your traditional services for enterprise customers, you're addressing costs on both sides and, again, adding a recurring revenue stream for you. It's win-win all round and something many telcos are already looking into. The second potential source of revenue from your enterprise customers revolves around the DNS. Every telco in the world has an investment in DNS infrastructure for its own use, but most of your enterprise customers do as well. It's a fundamental and necessary part of most of their IT infrastructures. They need a DNS structure that is secure and resilient. We've all heard DNS outage horror stories. These can be caused by loss of a critical domain name, a DDoS attack, or a malicious redirection of services, or even a natural disaster. Each of these can have serious reputational, financial, and operational consequences on your customers. Their DNS needs ongoing maintenance, monitoring, and efforts to ensure its reliability and availability, security, and performance. So how can a telco add value here? Simple. As with the domain name and add-on services we discussed earlier, you can offer a range of DNS support services, leveraging your infrastructure, but as far as consultancy is concerned, fully outsourced to another company at a profit. So to wrap up, we've shown you 3 case studies of how telcos have boosted revenues from existing customers. We've shown you how they've gained dominant market share in national markets by exploiting their natural advantages. And we've shown you how they've improved security, resiliency, and margins while simultaneously upgrading their software and services. We've shared the kind of purchase experience your small business customers can expect from your new domain services website. We've also shared with you the ways to unlock the potential revenues in offering domain and DNS services to your enterprise customers. These are all very real, current, and growing areas of revenues exploited by telcos, and we hope that the themes discussed today have inspired you as well as informed you. To learn more or discuss how any of these opportunities relate to your business, please feel free to get in touch with us. And with that, I will now hand back to Tim.
Okay, Ben, Rishi, and Sven, thank you very much indeed for a very interesting presentation. I'm sure there'll be plenty of interesting questions coming in from that. So, on that note, we will now begin the question and answer session for this presentation. So, should you have any questions about what you've just seen, please use the Q&A box, the instant messenger looking box that you can see on the left-hand side of this page. Any questions that come through, we'll get through as many as we can in the time allowed. So let's begin then with a question about CapEx and OpEx. And during that presentation, Ben, quite early on, you mentioned that it's a sort of fully automated service and little resources required itself. So what does the typical sort of CapEx and OpEx look like for a telco looking to set themselves up to sell domains and the related services as you discussed during your presentation?
Thanks, Tim. That's a very good question. The technologies involved have undergone some fairly massive changes over the past decade, really. So the technology still exists if somebody's looking for a on-premise software solution, which is integrated on your premises and so on. So that would typically involve a fairly substantial capital investment initially, and then you'd also be handling a lot of the running costs as a telco. But now we've moved gradually through various blended offerings, which are also available, through to one with a initial relatively small CapEx investment, and then we're not really even necessarily talking about OpEx. As a fully outsourced managed service, it can actually be simply a revenue share, whereas as the host telco, you receive a portion of the revenues, but actually it's fully outsourced to us. So there's quite a range of models with different mixes.
Okay then, and so you mentioned this sort of
change from a model that used to require sort of quite a heavy capex investment. Now it's a bit more minimal. How does that affect the sort of revenues that can be achieved? So what are the margins involved?
Well, the revenues achieved are the same. I guess it's just a matter of more about managing the costs and the portions of the revenues that go to the telco. There's actually quite a range. Various country codes, for instance, sell for higher prices than others, and so, for example, in the United Kingdom, Germany, and so on, we're talking about a £2 or say €4 or €5 price for a domain name. That's quite low, and so, but volumes can be very high. Both of those domains have sold over 10 million, and as we've mentioned, SSL certificates, web hosting, and so on are quite high margin products, so they can be upsold. For other countries, particularly in developing markets, you'll find that the preferred local domain, the local country code, is more expensive, and there's quite a significant margin. So decent margins can be made on every sale in those countries.
Right, and just a quick question from me then. I mean, you mentioned that some countries have much higher premiums on their domain names. What's the cause of that? Why would that be the case?
Typically, it's about just the stage in the evolution of their digital economy, and so if you cast your mind back 15 years, the .co.uk would have been much more expensive then. But gradually, what typically happens is as the country gets online, and there's greater and greater consumer demand for domain names. As every small business wants to get online, it drives the price down. And so it's to do really with internet penetration in that country. So you'll find the high internet penetration countries like the UK, Germany, Japan, the United States tend to have lower prices, lower margins, but much higher volumes. And where there's low volumes, there tend to be higher margins.
Sure, and I suppose that then puts much more of an emphasis or on pressure on renewable domain name services. So what's the sort of average renewal rate, should I say, for domains?
So for .com domain names, it's in the 70-odd%, and so for a established retail of domain names, be it a telco or a pure play retail of domain names, they can be making as much as 65% of their revenues from renewals or existing customers who just essentially just automatically sign up to renew their domains. So that's a very, very healthy revenue stream.
Right, and just coming back to some of the sort of variations in domain names, then are we seeing a different? Whether this is the right question for now, I don't know. But are we seeing quite a high uptake in sort of newer and more original domain names? You know, recently we saw in the city of London, you can get a registration for a domain name which is xyz.london. Are we seeing that quite a lot in different industries and different markets where it's relevant?
Absolutely. So the new top-level domain names have been around for around 2 years. There's over 1,000 new endings. So as you mentioned, there's city names .london, .nyc, .madrid, .paris, .dubai, and so on. But there's also many generic domain names, .xyz, .site, .online, .website, so on, and they're the ones that have really taken off. And all up, there's about 24 million of these new domain names have been registered. So
wow.
So it's moving fairly quickly, and it's definitely an area where telcos could introduce new domain names to some of their clients who might not be familiar with them. And one of the great advantages of these is that if you can't get the domain name you want under .com or under your country code, there's now new endings, which means that you can probably get the domain name that you want just with the new ending.
And I presume for particularly tailored or bespoke domain name endings, there'll be another revenue opportunity there for telcos as well. So on average, then, I mean, how would you say the typical sort of small medium business or an enterprise, how many domains do you think that they'd register for themselves? And can we put a value on each specific company as to how valuable the DNS service to that company is?
Yes, people are sometimes surprised that they think that each small company will only register one domain name and use it for their website and their email, but that's not necessarily the case at all. It's actually quite common now, even for small companies, to register multiple domain names to capture traffic, to protect their trademarks. So they might want the .com and the local country code and possibly a country code from the countries surrounding them. So it can actually be quite lucrative. And then when you move to larger enterprises, it's not at all uncommon for a large company to have at least a few hundred domain names. And when you look at the largest companies, they can have tens of thousands.
Wow.
So it's and so there again, there are services that a telco can render to those enterprise clients of helping them manage their portfolios. And again, those services can be completely outsourced. So basically, the telco introduces the customer and takes an ongoing revenue stream without having to incur any costs at all.
Now, we just had a question that has come through from the audience asking for a bit more of a security slant. I don't know if this is a little bit tangential to the conversation that we've been having just now. But what are your thoughts, either Ben or Sven Holger, on the opportunity for telcos, whether it's possible for them to offer sort of security services like firewall on top of distributed denial of service protection and malware detection? Is that something that either of you guys are able to go into a bit of detail on now?
I think that's a Sven Holger question.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. It's Sven Holger. Well, the DNS is you can combine this a bit. What you can do is you have authoritative name servers which host the zone, the content of it, and then you have the caching resolvers which make the resolution, the resolving of the domain names. And on that part of the DNS, you can filter requests. And when you filter requests, this is similar to a firewall with a similar result.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, right now, so the final question we've got for this Q&A session, we're just running up on time, unfortunately. But the final question here then is about whether a lot of the elements that we've touched upon during this discussion is possible to be outsourced. So basically, is complete outsourcing of the DNS an option?
Well, I think telcos probably need to have some in-house DNS infrastructure. However, what we're advocating here is that telcos can offer managed DNS services to their enterprise clients. And so it's more of an outsource opportunity for your clients with you as the outsource provider. And of course, a company like ourselves can assist with that, both in terms of your consulting offering, advising you on how to structure your DNS, and also providing you with other add-on services that you can on-sell.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much indeed, Ben and Sven Holger, for your thoughts during the Q&A session, and to the two of you and Rishi as well for the presentation. So all that remains for me to do now is draw an end to today's webinar session on telecoms.com. My thanks go to our speakers and to CentralNic for making today's webinar possible, and to you, listener, for giving us your attention this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are. So that's it from me, Tim Skinner. Thanks very much indeed for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on another telecoms.com webinar. That's all for now. Bye-bye.